All right, it's week 14 here in the NFL. Survivor pools, scratching and surviving, coming up next. All right, guys, we are still alive here at Scratchin' and Survivin'. If you are watching, congratulations. That means you are most likely still alive in your pool. If you are not alive in your Survivor pool and you're watching this, then, well, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you get something out of this. You actually should be watching this. The videos are relatively short. I try to keep them to 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And hopefully I could just give you a little bit of a tidbit that not only will help you in Survivor pools, may help you in some other types of sports betting, other types of pools. But for those of you still alive, let's try and continue it. Let's try and get you to the finish line and win those pools. For me, I am still in that pool. I'm still alive in the pool. It started out with 8,000 people. We are down to about 50 or so. Not too many people knocked out. If Seattle would have lost that game last week, we would have been down to about 26. That's and it's a $600,000 pot on that one, so it would have been pretty nice. Now, of course, I'm not rooting against any of you guys who had Seattle. I know some of you did, so congratulations on that pick. But that also brings me to the point of hedging, where if you had Seattle and you're in a pool where there's not, there's a limited amount of people left, you may have hedged that game. And I've been suggesting at this point in the season or this point in the pools that you really probably want to start looking towards hedging your bets. When you get down to a certain amount, there's no really set way or set amount of people that you're looking to have left in the pool before you're going to start hedging. That's going to be a personal decision based on what your risk tolerance is. But for a lot of you, we're down to the nitty gritty. So if you had Seattle last week, hopefully you were able to hedge that. And when I say hedge, I like to do it against the point spread. So I would have taken the Rams with the points. And of course, you would have hit that bet. I was able to do that. I have to take 2 picks. And I passed on Seattle. We went through that whole thing last week. We're going to get into that a little bit more this week. But I passed on Seattle, took Cleveland, and the choice for me was between Green Bay and Tampa. Now, I sided with Tampa, even though there was a slightly better probability on Green Bay, only because it gave me the ability to have the game on Monday night. I'd have a stronger hedge opportunity should someone like Seattle lose, which they almost did. It would have given me the chance to hedge for an even higher amount. So I hedged relatively small on Monday night, but that paid off because, of course, Tampa wins that game in dramatic fashion, but they don't win enough to cover. So I had the Saints plus 3.5 points, was able to hit that bet and still survive in the pool. So that's really ideally the best case scenario, is have your team survive and win by a small margin, not cover the spread. So you really want to look into hedging these things. That's really it's a main part of Survivor pools. I hate hedging parlays. I hate hedging future bets. Why do I hate those hedges? Because why did you make the bet in the first place? That's what I always say. If you made a bet, a futures bet, or the one I see most often is probably, a 5-team parlay in the NFL, and you have the last leg of the parlay is, let's say, the Saints on Monday Night Football. So you win all 4, and now we're going into Monday Night Football, and inevitably I'll always get the question, should I cash out or hedge? The cash out has become a thing now in sports betting, where it really wasn't the case when I was younger, when you were dealing with just a local bookie. They didn't have that option. You'd really just have to put in a bet against what your bet was and a so-called hedge. Now you could cash out on these platforms. Now, usually the cash out is going to be a negative EV play. Almost always it's negative EV. It's kind of like the deal or no deal, right? Where they give you that amount. You can take the amount or keep playing. I never really did the calculations. Sometimes I would watch that show and do the but you could easily do the calculation in your head as to whether or not they're giving you a good deal or a bad deal. But it was a similar type of thing where you could just kind of cash out, quit the game. In that scenario, on those shows, the cash out probably was a good play more often than not, even if it was negative EV, because we're dealing in a situation where that's a once in a lifetime chance. If they're offering you $150,000, even though there might be the $1 million or $500,000 still up on the board, odds are pretty good. They're giving you something really close to EV. They're just doing an EV calculation. They're not making that number up off the top of their head. But even if it's slightly negative EV, that's a situation where you may want to take the cash out, or just end the or my grandmother used to say, when they would ask you deal or no deal, she would say no deal, take the money. She didn't quite understand the wording there, but you would, in that situation, like I said, that's a once in a lifetime large amount of money. You're not going to be in that situation again. So to give up a little bit of equity in order to limit the amount of variance is understandable. So when you're in pools like this, that's what we're really doing, is we're limiting the variance, because it's extremely difficult to win these pools. You may go a lifetime not winning one of these large pools. More than likely, you will go a lifetime not winning a pool if it's large enough. Even if you were in a one, if you were 1 out of 100, let's just take something that has no skill, these box pools, right? Super Bowl box pools, whatever it may be. If you play in one box pool a year, you may never win for your entire life. You've got a 1 in 100 chance, and I mean win the final, the big prize, right? You have a 1 in 100 chance of being that person. If you play it in your entire adult life and you play it for 60 years, there's a probability there that you will never win, right? So we're not dealing, and that's only a box pool, 1 in 100. Sometimes you're dealing in thousands and thousands. So you need to manage your expectations. So the reason I like hedging here is just for that fact, right? With the probability, even if we got down to 10 people, depending on what teams we have left, you're still not a favorite. Nobody in the pool is a favorite down to 10 people to actually win that pool. You're going to be obviously a 10% probability to win. If you've got some better teams left than everyone else, maybe it's a little bit higher. But at the end of the day, it's still not a great chance that you're going to win. So we want to hedge. We want to be able to take some cash off the table and limit the variability in what we can expect, in our expected return on these games. Excuse me. So hedging, I think, is extremely important in these scenarios. Let me just touch on why hedging is bad, in my opinion, when you've got a futures bet or you've got the parlays. Because every time you hedge, you are paying juice. You're paying the VIG on the game, right? Typically, a game is minus 110 on the spread. Well, now you're paying that. You already paid it when you put in the parlay or when you put in the futures bet. And by the way, if you guys play futures, that's where the VIG is way greater. It could be up to 20 to 30% sometimes. You just can't really see it. It's very difficult to see. You know what the VIG is when you're playing the spread. It's minus 105, minus 110, minus 115. Even on a money line sometimes, where you could see, if we're taking a money line and a minus 200 or plus 180, you could see that 20% or a 20-cent differential that we call a spread in the spread. That 20-cent differential, that means the line should probably be minus 190. That's why I tell you guys, use the Sharp app. And I didn't mention the Sharp app yet, but use the Sharp app, download it, it's free. And to figure out what the best percentage is, what the percentage of your team winning is, because you want to find that midpoint, because they're taking juice on the game, or a VIG. So if the game should be a minus 190, let's make the numbers easy. Minus 150 is implied 60% win percentage, right? So if the books think that team has a 60% chance to win, well, they're not going to offer you minus 150. They're going to put it at minus 160 or minus 165, something like that. And of course, they're not going to give you plus 150 on the underdog that has a 40% chance to win. They're going to give you something more in the line of plus 135, plus 140. When it comes to futures bets, you can't really see. It's very difficult if you have, let's say, the top 5 teams are to win the Super Bowl, or plus 300, plus 400, plus 800, plus 1,000. It's very difficult for you to figure out now just how much they're taking. But there are ways to do that. I've got videos on hold. There's something called the hold percentage. I've got videos in the Sharp Academy, which you can find inside the Sharp app and here on this YouTube channel. Check out those videos, hold percentage, and you'll realize just how much you're paying on these futures bets. So with all that said, when you're paying a lot of juice in the beginning on that bet, which you are, presumably, let's hope you're making these bets because there is some sort of an edge that you see. Now, most people are just doing it because they've got a feeling, or they like a particular, they've got a fundamental reason why they like that bet. And they're not using models or anything like that are telling them, hey, you've got a 5-10% edge, whatever the case may be, enough of an edge to beat the VIG. So what most people are doing is then making a bet that's probably was a bad bet in the first place, but now here they are in a position an enviable position where they've got equity in the bet and now they want to hedge. So all they're doing is every time they get themselves in that situation is just giving an advantage to the house. You've got the house on the edge, on the ropes, and then you are letting them off the hook. Just I always think about it this way, where if you made that bet, or if someone made that bet with you, would you want them to cash out, or would you hope that they took a shot? Now, depends on your risk tolerance, how much the bet is, obviously. But I'd always say, I hope you cash out. You've already got me beat. All right, so go ahead, cash out, because over time, that's a good bet for me. All right, let's jump into the Survivor grid, and we'll talk about this more as we go and hopefully make some sense for you. All right, jumping in the Survivor grid, I got this sorted by the EV. So we could sort this, of course, by the best spread, because this EV number becomes less significant here as we go, as the season starts to wind down. Of course, it's going to be very specific to your pool. Now, if you do have Dallas remaining, this would probably be a good time to take him. You'd probably be one of the only people left in your pool. One of you guys who watch these videos has been emailing me. We've been going over his games. He's got 8 people left in his pool, and he has Buffalo remaining, which is phenomenal at this point. He's the only one with Buffalo. Someone else has Dallas that they're able to pick, so I'm going to assume that they're going to go ahead and take Dallas. He's going to take Buffalo, and then pretty much everyone else is looking at taking everyone's taking Cincinnati, so it's really from this line down: San Francisco, Seattle, Tennessee, Miami, Pittsburgh. Those are going to be the teams that everyone else is sort of looking at for picks. So you're going to more than likely lose 2 or 3 of those people, because they're looking at like 60 to 65% chance of any one of these teams winning. So depending on how many different teams they take, that's going to vary, but we can expect 2 or 3 of those to lose. The probability of Dallas losing, very small. Buffalo, obviously, their probability of losing a little bit greater than Dallas, but I'll take my chances at this point. If I can get myself a 9 or 10-point favorite in Week 14, I'm going to be ecstatic. If it doesn't pay off, then just so be it. I mean, you have to kind of chalk that up. But what it also does is give you a lot more room for that hedge, right? So those of you who are stuck with having to take a 3.5-point favorite, you don't have as much flexibility here. So if you have to San Fran against Tampa, you don't have as much room to catch that middle. But I still like the hedge bet nonetheless. Like I said, it worked out for me on Monday night with that Tampa bet. So we'll see. Now, we got a little bit of we got a little duped here by the Seattle. We thought the Seattle line was going to be higher, and then when I ran my model this week, it actually is in line. I have this game at 4 myself on my model, so I thought Seattle, though, would be a larger favorite. They are not, just 3.5. So good that we were able to get by. If you passed on Seattle last week, it was great that you were able to take Cleveland. It was still the right call if your decision was between those two teams. Was to take Cleveland in that situation. You're probably not going to take Cleveland again if we just kind of look at the Cleveland line. Potentially against New Orleans, we'll see, but I don't think so. That's not going to be one that you're going to be interested in. So it was still the right decision, and we're going to go ahead. For me, I've got to take. I could take my choices here of any of these teams from San Francisco down pretty much. And it looks like Tennessee is probably going to be one of the teams I take. And then it's a question of Seattle or one of these other teams. And it's probably going to be Seattle again because of the hedge opportunity. That's a 425 game on Sunday. I'll be able to hedge out of it, assuming I can get by with Tennessee. If others in the pool, this is double picks. If others in the pool get eliminated, that's going to give me a better idea of where I stand. Of course, the more information you have, the better decisions you can make, the better hedge decision you can make. If I'm forced to hedge at 1 o'clock, I don't have as much information. Not all the games have gone off. So I like to look for as late a game as possible to sort of break ties when I'm looking at multiple teams. So this is where we stand here now. You really, at this point, there's not a whole lot of advice I could give you other than you are almost always going to be taking the best possible team left, because presumably you are down to very few people. Even in pools where you have a lot of people, you're probably going to want to take the best possible team on the board. And that is, of course, unless you can potentially save them. I mean, if by chance you had Buffalo and Denver, now Buffalo is the better team, but you certainly would want to hold. I mean, not Denver, Kansas City. Buffalo's the better team here, 1 point greater edge on the point spread. So, of course, you'd be leaning towards Buffalo. But the fact that Kansas City gets Houston next week would mean that you definitely would want to save them. But I can't imagine too many of you are in a situation where you have multiple teams that are big favorites here this week. Even Vegas, most people have taken, and Cincinnati, most people have taken. So the odds are pretty good that you have a fairly simple decision to make this week. So don't overthink it. We're going to take the best possible team. Again, why? Because there's not much time left in the pool. Why do we go with the riskier picks early in the season? Well, because we're hoping now, when we can sort of look back on early in the season, we're hoping now that we do have a few of these stronger teams left. For one, we don't really know early in the season just where we're going to be, right? Did we know that San Francisco was going to lose 2 quarterbacks? Did we know that Lamar Jackson was not going to play this week? We don't know, right? Now, we have better information here in Week 14. The probability of, let's say, Josh Allen missing next week's game is a lot lower, of course, than in Week 1. If you ask me, is Josh Allen going to be available in Week 14, Week 15? I mean, if we had to put a probability on it, whatever that number is going to be, it's going to be a lot lower than it is today. He's just got to get past this week's game to make it to next week, as opposed to he had to get past 11 or 12 games to get to this week's game if we were talking about Week 1. So there's a lot more uncertainty earlier in these pools. And what we're trying to do, again, in these pools is we're trying to win. We're trying to build as much equity as we can. And we're going into it with the thought that we're going to be hedging at some point based off the equity that we have in the pool. And how do we build equity? We hopefully have some quality teams left and we're in a better situation than some of these other people that are still in the pool. Not easy to do, of course, not easy to be able to survive, but winning these pools is not easy. So if you're able to take some chances early, that puts you in a much more enviable situation late to not only win the pool, but to hedge as well. So that's why we look at it, and that's why I play these pools the way I do, where I'm going to take risk and I want to have multiple picks so that I can have a lot of different options. You know, if I'm in that 8,000 person pool, I had 130 picks in there. We're down to 1 pick. You're kind of, it is what it is. Whatever you're left with at that point, you're left with, and you play the cards that you're dealt. So that is it for this week. Again, not a lot I could really tell you about this week's games, other than you're more than likely going to be taking the best possible team. If you're in a situation where you don't totally know what you want to do, of course, leave me a comment down below. You can always chat me up in our Discord, and you can get into the Discord directly from the Sharp app or the link down below. All right, guys, good luck. I really look forward to seeing you all back next week. And let's try to take this down. If you win, by the way, let us know down in the comments. I love hearing when you guys take down these pools. Good luck, guys. We'll see you next week.